Rev up your engines! Yes, it's time for another road trip. I'm headed to Rhode Island for the summer. Now, I've helped a lot of people out here in Tennessee, and I'll give you a bunch of tips later on. And I'm headed to Rhode Island to help people out in Rhode Island. So you can start contacting me and set up appointments. I'm gonna be there till the middle of July, so there's plenty of time to meet me and show me your problems. Because remember, we're in this all together. If we can share our problems and our solutions, guess what happens? Everybody wins. Except for the people that are trying to rip you off, selling you junky cars, or overcharging you for working on your car, or perhaps not even fixing your car right and charging you money for it. So, here we go. Now, as per usual, I've been testing things out. Here's a really bad thing that I'll warn you never to buy. Now, this Natco folding electric bike looks really cute. And I made it as short as possible so my grandson could ride it around, and he loved it. As you can see, as we turn it on, it's got 5 miles on it. Then the stinking electric motor broke. Watch. We'll turn it on with the throttle, and all it does now is click. For about a minute or two, it made a horrible grinding noise, and now, as you can see, it will roll forwards, but when you try to go backwards, the rear wheel's locked up. The motor's inside there. The motor's broken. So, it lasted 5 miles. Not exactly value for your money. And now, you can't even really use it as a pedal bike because it won't even go, you can't rock it backwards. The whole thing's broken. So don't waste money. Let me test them out. And then, don't buy one. Now, on the other hand, I absolutely love this Hopsco electric bike. It's held up great, and it's a lot of fun because it has a shock absorber for the back and 2 shock absorbers in the front. It really rides well. Now, granted, it's an adult-sized bike. Grandkid can't drive it yet, but it's a lot of fun, especially off-road. Doesn't come with fenders because it's an off-roader. And if you do go off-road, hey, you're going to get muddy anyway, so who cares? It's got a good, strong battery, and it has hydraulic brakes. They don't use brake fluid. They use mineral oil. The rotors are even drilled in the back and the front. They don't slip. They're very good brakes. And it's got a decent 7-speed gear. A Shimano, so it's decent. A decent electronic setup on it. We'll turn it on. Gives you how much battery's left, while you're going, range. And if you use the pedal assist, I've gone as far as 60 miles on it. Still had some electricity left. And of course, you can always pedal it back home. This isn't electric only. And for you speed freaks, you know, technically it's only an electric bicycle to a certain speed, depending on a certain area. Well, I've had this thing going 30 miles an hour with pedal assist, so it can really fly if you want to. Motorcycle-sized tires, hey, it really handles well. It's not like the old skinny tires where they're shaking. It's very stable. You really want a shock. You can adjust the front. You can even lock it out entirely if you want to have a rougher ride, more control, or a smoother one. And both sides are adjustable. Quality is immaculate. You look at the welds, you can't even see them. They're so smooth. This thing was so smoothly built. So it's an electric bike that can really hold up. And if you're into style, hey, it's got the wiring inside. Designed quite well, but not just that, it holds up. Now here's another thing that I found held up really well. It's a little light lantern. You can pull it up. So it's tall when you want it, short when you don't. I like this thing so much, it's coming with me to Rhode Island. We use it to power our house for about a whole day when the power went out and the big storm we had here in Tennessee. The highest winds they've had down here in like 100 years. Lasted quite some time because it's got different levels. You don't always want the super bright, so you can make it less bright, even less bright, and then completely off. Decent sized battery on it. Nice hanging hook. And this is all silicone, so it's very flexible. You don't have to carry this big thing around. You can make it small. You don't have to mess with batteries. You just charge the lithium-ion battery back up, and it'll last quite some time. And as you can see, you can get it on Elisol on the Amazon. And as per usual, this isn't a paid ad. I check out all kinds of stuff. I buy them or people send them to me. I found an awful lot of crappy, cheap lights that didn't work. But I've had one of these a couple of years now. Still works perfectly fine. It's relatively heavy. It's got a decent-sized battery. And hey, it doesn't take up space. If it was like this all the time, yeah. You can have it in your car, no, but squash it down. I can even hide it under the back in a little compartment. Have it handy when I need it. It's a good idea to have a jumper. You might help somebody else, you might help yourself out. I've had these Hulkmans for quite some time. What I like about this one is, I actually have 3 of them. I told the company, send me 3 of them. So they sent me 3. I gave 2 of them away. and I used one. My grandson uses his all over the place, and he said it's the best one that he's had so far. His friends have junky cars. He often buys and sells cars, so he goes out to ones that are sitting in the field, uses this to start them up. The best one he's had so far. And this is my test one, which is a very interesting test because it sat inside the trunk for 2 years, all right? You know, batteries sit for 2 years, usually they go crap. Well, check this out. It's been sitting in the trunk for 2 years, so we'll turn it on. It still has 100% charge. It has lost a whopping 0% over 2 years. The lithium-ion battery that's in this obviously is a quality battery. It's an expensive charger, but it's heavy. What you want in a charger is heaviness. It weighs more, just like a battery. The battery is heavier, it's going to have more power than one that hardly weighs anything, right? And considering that this is lithium-ion and it's heavy, lithium-ion batteries, of course, are a lot lighter than lead-acid batteries. You get a heavy lithium-ion battery, it's going to get a lot of power. 2 years, it's still got 100%. That impresses me. And my grandson's got the same exact one, got it the same exact time. 2 years later, it's still jump starting cars. Sure, he's got to had to recharge it a few times, but hey, if it can sit for 2 years in your trunk and then you finally need it and you push the button, it's 100% and it works. That's what you want. There's nothing worse than, well, it's been in my trunk a couple of years. Oh, my battery's dead. Great. And you put it in, it doesn't have any charge. It doesn't work anymore. No, this thing works. And now here's one of the handiest tools you can have on a road trip. A giant screwdriver. Okay, what are you going to do with a giant screwdriver? Well, for one, let's say you get in the fender bender and you want to drive somewhere. You don't want to have to be towed and waiting forever. Guess what? Gets crunched in, you can pry it back out. I can't think of so many times over the course of me repairing cars the last 54 years, somebody has to tow a car to me because their fender, something smashed in, rubbing a tire. They had like just a little pry bar, boop, off they go. They can just pop it off, and of course, if you've got stuck hubcap or something, this will take it off. You got something that you really have to pry off, a fan belt you got to replace. You said, if I only had a pry bar to pry that. Well, guess what? You get a giant screwdriver, doesn't take up much space. It can be a lifesaver. You got to check your air pressure before you go. First thing in the morning when it's cold. 32 right on. And don't forget to do all four. But of course, just for safety's sake, good idea to have a good air pump. This particular one is a Vi-Air. I've had this thing for like 8 years. It's never let me down because it clamps on the battery. It doesn't have its own battery, runs off your battery. Let's face it, there's nothing like a solid metal. This is metal. This is metal. Here's the quality. I'd rather pay more. Get something that lasts a lifetime. We're gonna have cars with air tires, whether they're gasoline, diesel, or electric. They're gonna have tires full of air, right? I mean, they do have airless tires, but they cost a fortune. They ride like crap, so that'll probably never come to true unless you go to the moon. A good solid metal pump can last you a lifetime. If you don't have one in your trunk, it isn't gonna do you any good, so put one in. Let's face the facts, half the gas stations you go to, the pump doesn't even work or it doesn't have a gauge, so you have to guess. It's got a built-in gauge too. Just get a good one, then you don't have to depend on something that probably isn't there. And realize this, many modern cars no longer have spare tires. Your tires go bad, you don't have a spare to put on them, but if you got a pump, you can pump them back up. Now, of course, when you're on a road trip, you want to check the oil and all that stuff. I always change it right before, so I don't have to think about it for a while. And check the coolant when it's cool, that's full. And also make sure it's tight back on, but look at your overflow. You can see the overflow's up to the full. There's the pink at the full. The battery's not corroded. Hand belt's not frayed or worn out and squealing. All the usual stuff under the hood. And if you have a wife like me, hey, clean the mats out so she's not riding in a pigsty car and going to yell at you. Doesn't take much, especially with these 3D ones I had. They pull out real easy. Really? I'll get a spray cleaner. You don't want your paint to wear out. Hey, it'll get rid of bird poop real easy. This waterless stuff works great. You don't need any water. Cleans it off great. And really, it works on just about everything. You open it up, spray it around, then beat the pieces off. Just like a rug. And if your wife watches everything like mine, do the back ones too. And check your wiper blades. If they're all old and cracked, hey, you might as well change them now. But years ago, I put on these Rain-X silicone wiper blades and they still work fine. Because you want to see where you're going if it's raining, and there's nothing worse. You're stuck on a place like the New York Thruway where you can't buy anything. You won't be able to buy new ones, and if you do, they're going to really stick it to you and charge you a fortune because you're at their beck and call. Always do your wardrobe blades like I do. Buy them online. Get them cheaper, then you don't get ripped off. You know you've got good ones. If they're old, what the heck? Just put on a pair before you take your road trip. So I'm off on my road trip. Here I go. But don't look for me on this green electric bike. It's going back in the garage. I'll be driving the Matrix. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.